With the help of Hashem, we are learning Moed Katan Daf Zayin. We left off on Daf Zayin all the way on top of the Amid. We are learning about trapping rodents from orchards, from grain fields, and Bechlal, the concept that there are times that even when we are allowed to do a malacha, when we are allowed to do certain activities, but doing them in a way that they will be classified as a maise uman, or in a professional manner, will be something that we may not do those activities, as we will see it relates to the machlokas tanoim we had in the Mishnah regarding trapping rodents from certain areas. We're going to have on Daf Zayin a Mishnah that's going to address whether a kohen may inspect a person for tzora'as and chol hamoed. We will be spending a nice amount of time on Daf Zayin speaking a little bit about tumas tzora'as, about a mitzoida that's called a confined mitzoida, about a confirmed mitzoida, right? A musgar, a muchlat, the sum of the differences between them. There is a general idea that since Hashem commanded us on Yom Tiv, on Chol hamoed, v'samachta b'chagecha, so getting involved in something that might diminish our level of simcha is something that we may not do on Yom Tiv nor on Chol hamoed. And really the question regarding a person who thinks that he or she might have the signs of this tzoras leprosy, whether on their body, if they're going to go to a kohen, there's a big question whether the kohen has the right not to render a ruling. If the kohen has such a right, and he can abstain from rendering a ruling, and he would only render a ruling that would either leave the person the way they are, not make them worse, or actually make the person even better, then there wouldn't be a problem going to a kohen on Yom Tov, on Chol hamoed. We're going to focus on Chol hamoed now. But if a kohen who sees the signs of tzoras must immediately render a ruling, as we will learn the details, then there is room to say that don't even go to the kohen on Chol hamoed, because you might hear a ruling that will render you more tamei, and that's going to diminish or take away your simchas Yom Tiv. We're going to learn the concept that even though the Torah very often works through the ways of a hekesh, that we compare one case to the other, we learn rules here from Hashem's rules that are explicit over there. But if the source is what we call a chiddush, which means that the source is an area in where the regular klalim are not in effect, so we say michidusha loy gomrinan. We can't use a chiddush law to be a source to teach from it to other laws. Chavra, without any further ado, let us start on Daf Zayin, Amid Aleph, all the way on top of the Amid, Rabbi Yehuda Omer. So the topic in the Mishnah on Davav Amid Beis was regarding trapping the ishus rodent, the achbar rodent. Tanakama holds that you can trap them in the regular manner, whether you're trapping them from an orchard, and as we explained when we learned the Mishnah, that these rodents create greater damage when it comes to orchards, to trees, because they also eat up the roots of the trees. They create damage in a grain field, but on a lesser level. The first opinion in the Mishnah does not differentiate. The Mishnah holds that you are allowed to trap rodents both from an orchard and from a grain field. However, right, the Chachamim hold, as we learned in the Mishnah, and as we see in the Gemara in today's and top of the Amid, that the version the Gemara had in the Mishnah was not V'Chachamim Omrim, but it was actually the Rabbi Yehuda, that Rabbi Yehuda holds, it depends, that mistake ha'ilan, if you're laying the traps in an orchard, there again, since the damage is worse, so the Chachamim allowed us to do it even kedarkai, in the usual manner. However, umisadei halavan, if you are laying out these traps in a grain field, you are allowed to do it, but there you got to make a shinoi, you got to do it, you have to lay them shaloi kedarkai. So we're going to have again very interesting hafachba v'hafachba. Let's find out what's the usual manner, what's the unusual manner. I know today in LA you call up the Terminex, or who knows what other company. What do they do? So Tana Rabbanan, 3 lines from the top. What's the way kedarkai? What's the usual way of trapping these rodents? Chayfer guma, you dig out a hole, and v'toila b'mitzuda, and you suspend a trap in the hole. You furrow a hole because you want to have an exit from where these rodents, that many of them live a lot underground, they should be able to exit easy. And once they're coming out, that is where you suspend the trap. What is shaloi kedarkoi? So says the Gemara, says the Braisa, that noyetz shaput, that you would bang a spit or some sort of other metal pole into the ground, more or less above where you intuit is their underground home. So you're putting this metal spit in there, umake b'kordom, and you're going to knock, you're going to bang on top of the spit with a hammer. And what does that affect? It flattens the ground beneath it. The pshat, according to some, is that actually causes for their underground home to implode, and the rodents are caught and they are crushed where they are. That's the unusual manner, which at least that, according to Rabbi Yehuda, could be done in a stay lovin. Says the Gemara Tanya, we learned in a Brais. Either this is in the name of Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar, or we have in the Sheiltos, whose version is that the following was said by Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov, that Kesha'omru Misadei Lavan Shaloi Kedarkoi that was only said regarding a grain field that is not near an orchard. So there is where, again, the only problem is grain. It's taka problem. You are allowed to trap it. You got to trap it in an unusual manner. But if you have a grain field that's near an orchard, you can lay out traps in the usual manner. Why? Because because that's the nature of rodents. They don't know borders. Just because they are currently in a grain field, or their home that they made for themselves is under the ground of a grain field, nothing is stopping them of going over to the neighbor, you understand, and making a lachaim and a farbaisen over there. They're going to start eating up the roots. Now, the Gemara, again, doesn't give you exactly the distance, but it's not about where they are currently, but if it's normal for them to go and overreach into a nearby orchard, even Rabbi Yehuda will be moed that you can trap them kedarkoi. Okay, now the second din we learned in the Mishnah Davav was regarding repairing a fence around the field. All right, now when we speak about that, you are allowed to repair, that implies that you may not build. So let's read it inside. Right, if there was a breach in a fence around the field, you are allowed to fix it on Chol HaMoed. So now, says the Gemara, as a given, that you are allowed to repair it, but not in a professional manner. You got to do it in a more of a temporary way, in a less professional manner. It serves the purpose of affording protection, but it's not it's not good to go. You're going to have to finalize that, upgrade it after Yom Tov. Keitzad mekaden. How do you repair it? Rabbi Yosef says behutza v'dafna. Now, guys, you're going to put different types of leaves and different parts of branches from trees. You're going to insert it inside the fence. These things are not permanent, but they do the job, at least temporarily. The Masnis Atana and the Braisa, we learned the Braisa is not arguing, it's giving another option. Most of these fences were made out of stone. So you can even, you can pile the breach with stones, but you can't plaster them, or you can't cement them. In other words, whatever it is that you're doing, you're fixing the breach, not professionally, you're not fixing it permanently, but again, because of davar ha'aved, in other words, you can't have a breach in the field, someone or something will come and make a destruction, and that's called davar ha'aved, and you might lose principle. So to prevent the loss of principle, you are allowed to do malacha, in our case, again, with the shinoi or in an unprofessional manner. Amar Rab Chizda, lo yishanu, that on Chol HaMoed, right? You can only repair, but you may not build anew. Only if the fence is around a garden. In other words, the worst case scenario is not a great loss. These are concepts. What number is great? Not for now, the concept. So there you can repair. But if there is a wall or a fence, right, around your courtyard, and people very commonly Pasha, they lived in their homes and courtyard. So things of greater value were left in the courtyard. If someone were to walk into your courtyard, you would incur a greater loss. A greater loss. Here you are allowed to build, not only to repair, but you can lechatchila build. Wow. Says the Gemara, we can substantiate this statement of an Amayra of Rab Chizda from the following Braisa. The Braisa writes that that if there is a wall that's leaning into the public domain, so there's a danger that it might hurt someone, says the Braisa, soiser, you can demolish the wall, and mind you, once you demolish the wall, you took away the danger. But here the Braisa adds, ubayne kedarkai. Ubayne kedarkai means you can now rebuild it. Now, the Braisa adds the words, mipnei hasakana. There's a danger element. But make no mistake, the danger element is only when the wall is leaning, so thus allowing us to demolish it resolves the sakana. Rebuilding it, why can you rebuild it? L'chayda, you can rebuild it only because, like we mentioned, even though our Mishnah implies that you can only repair and not build, that's because our Mishnah is speaking about a garden. But if this is a wall separating the public domain and someone's private yard, if someone were to go into the yard, there would be a greater loss. There you can lechatchila build it. Raya. So the Gemara says there's no proof. There's no proof because maybe hasam kedektani taima b'pnei hasakana. Maybe the only reason why it's allowed to rebuild is because there's a danger element. But hold on, nachamol. The danger element is only when the wall is leaning. Once you break it, chavra, right? Once you broke it, there's no danger. The Braisa says you can rebuild it. The Gemara is arguing that's also connected to danger. And if you remember, we learned, and we'll continue to learn a concept. It's called that soifan atu tchilasan, or tchilasan atu soifan. It's the Talmudic way of writing the words that we find in Sefer Yetzirah, no'ot tchilasan v'soifan v'soifan v'tchilasan, which means that if the person will know that they may not rebuild the wall, they lechatchila won't demolish it. And if they won't demolish it, then there's going to be a danger. So again, maybe the whole reason why they allowed you to rebuild it is to prevent danger. When there is no danger involved at all, maybe you can't know from there. Maybe you may never rebuild it. There's another version of how they brought the Braisa in conjunction with Rab Chizda, Ikeda Amri, that they actually used this Braisa to challenge Rab Chizda. Tashema, it says in the Braisa, that if there is a wall that's leaning over the public domain, leaning over in a way where there's a danger that it might fall on the public domain, and that, God forbid, can hurt or kill. So there, says the Braisa, soiser, you are allowed to demolish the wall on Cholamoyed and ubayne kedarke and rebuild it properly, because all of this is connected to danger. So here, fakir, this is a kasha. In other words, what do we see? That the only time they allow you to build is when there's a danger element. In, loy. That's a problem. That's a kasha. So therefore, lema to have it to yufta the Rab Chizda, who allows you to build a wall around a yard, even if there's no danger element. So answers the Gemara, Rab Chizda under the opposite. Hasam soiser obayna. Because of the danger element, there is something unique, which is you can demolish and build. Hacha, but around the yard, if there's no danger, there's already a wall that's not okay, you may not demolish and rebuild. But you can rebuild. Asks the Gemara, hold on. Now even when there is a danger element, so again, only demolish. Hasam nami listed livni. So answers the Gemara that if you would not allow a person to rebuild it, imkain mimna v'loisoiser, they will not demolish it, and the allowance of rebuilding is part of the solution which addresses the danger element. Now that we did not refute Rab Chizda, says Rav Ashi, I actually will prove Rab Chizda's statement from our Mishnah. Daika nami, masnisa nami daika, because it says in our Mishnah, ubashvi is boine kedarkoim. The Mishnah is also speaking about the Shemitah year, that you are allowed to build a fence around somewhere. The Mishnah didn't say what during the Shemitah year. Now, what is the case of the Mishnah Dehecha? If the Mishnah is speaking about a yard is an area in which no one ever plants anything. Guys, Shemitah, all of the restrictions that we have on Shemitah are only related to the produce of the land. Can't work the land, you can't, right? Like we learned a few days ago. Why would you even think that you can't build a wall which is not connected to plantations, which would be your yard? It can't be that the Mishnah is speaking about a chatzah because tzricha l'meimar. Of course you can build a wall around your chatzah on Shemitah, why not? Therefore it must be elalav degina. There's a chiddush, because afal gav the mechse commando of nitiros elepeda, even though it looks like you are building a wall to protect your produce, and as we spoke out when we learned the Mishnah, part of the laws of Shemitah is you must allow for everyone to have access to the fruits, to the produce, to the grains that is growing on your land. It belongs to everyone. And building a wall appears like you are not allowing anyone to enter, which is taka why there's a novelty for the Mishnah to teach you that you are allowed to build a wall. Why are you allowed to build a wall? Because when you build a wall, you can leave the gate open. You know, there's two different things. You're building a wall, but it doesn't, you can always, like we know, you have a wall, you have a fence around your house. If you leave it open, there's no problem. But bottom line is that since in the case of Shemitah, which the Mishnah juxtaposes with the case of Chol HaMoed, it must be referring to a gina, to a garden. So Shema Mina, that when the Mishnah says you can repair, from which we infer, repair yes, but build a new no, is only regarding a garden, like Rab Chizda says. And this is a beautiful concept. So there is working not in a professional manner to prevent a lesser amount of loss. A greater loss, which is what were to happen if you don't have a protection around your personal property, you can even build l'chatchila. You can build l'chatchila. So it's not davar ha'aved. Is there a loss? Is there not a loss? So what we learned right now is a gavaldika idea, is that there are madreges, there are levels in a davar ha'aved. Lesser amount, a greater amount. And the way this is worded in other areas in halacha, remember hefsid meruba. Hefsid meruba allows for a greater amount of hetedim. Again, the words that were used by Chol HaMoed, for whatever reason, is not hefsid meruba or hefsid, it's davar ha'aved, but still this concept we already begin to see that there are different levels of loss, however you measure it, and the more the loss, the greater the heter you will receive. Okay, now Chevra, the next sugya that is going to go throughout today's daf, and it's going to go into daf ches, speaks about the laws of leprosy. And just as an intro, which will help us understand, we spoke out a while back because we were learning a sugya regarding leprosy, or at least I think we were learning a sugya of leprosy at the time that we were learning Parshas Tazria, and the Alter Rebbe has a phenomenal insight regarding there are two portions in the Torah, or there's a portion and a part of Mitzvah that speaks about something, a phenomena that we don't find nowadays. And just for the sake of clarity, and as we'll see throughout the sugya, for those who erroneously think that tzara'as is some sort of physical ailment, and we do find the concept of you need to quarantine explicitly in the Torah. The Mitzvah, male or female, once they are declared a Mitzvah, at a certain point, they have to go michutz lamachana, they have to move out of the walled city, people keep away from them. If all of that is to prevent, let's say, the spread of an illness, then all of the details that we're learning now will not fit. And then the crux of the matter is that a person is only deemed a Mitzvah only after the Kohen declares that person to be a Mitzvah. And not only that, we'll see a issue of it's possible that a Kohen can look at someone, examine someone's signs of tzaras, and not to dampen the joy of Yom Tov, we'll see some opinions hold. He can say, I'm not giving you a ruling. Come back next week. And obviously, if there would be a danger element or a health element, what do you mean come back next week? If a person, God forbid, is diagnosed today with an illness, for the doctor to tell the person, come back next week, I don't want to ruin your Chol HaMoed, you're not allowed to do that. If a person has an illness, they have to know what it is, and they have to start treating it, or if they're contagious, at least to prevent other people. This is a ruchniistic thing, as we know, that when we were on a higher level, or the words of the Alter Rebbe, that Torah is to be learned in every single world. But the written Torah primarily is the Torah of the world of Atzilus, which is why what halachis in the Torah are the most spelled out explicitly, the laws of karbanos, including the laws of tzaras. And the laws of tzaras is dafka given to people that are on a very high level, Very high level. And their imperfection is only very superficial. That's the way we view a tzaras. And and that's why the manifestation of their imperfection is external. The lower the generation, the deeper the issues a person has beruchnias, that if and when that manifests physically, it's going to manifest in some sort of internal organ issue. So just as an approach, and of course it doesn't contradict at all, that it's about saying Lashon Hara, we know all that. But it's a good way to look at it. When we say that Mashiach is a leper, and any ailment, begashmias, that is of external, of the skin, actually is not such a bad thing. Even though until today, all of the skin ailments, we don't know properly how to cure them yet. But it actually implies that the ikir, the inner, is okay, and there's some final external thing that has to be rectified, and that is what's happening in the world of Atzilus, that any imperfection is if there is an imperfection, is very superficial, and these are the laws of tzaras. Now, we're going to make another intro to a couple of more details on Amud Beis, but let's begin learning the Mishnah. Says Rabbi Meir, Oimer Royin es Hanagoyim. We're going to take out the word Batchila, which is very important, but we'll see why we'll take it out. It's in the parentheses. Royin es Hanagoyim lo hakel. That if a person, now another quick, there's Nagoyim on the body, there's Nagoyim on the garment, there's Nagoyim on the house. Nagoyim, it's very nuanced. There are many details. Let's speak about blemishes of the body. That there are various signs that could appear on one's skin. For example, there are parts of the body, let's say the skin of one person's arm, in where you have skin and there's small hairs growing out of that area. So you have, if a minimum size of area, kigris, 36 hairs by 36 hairs, become very white, with all of the details of how white is that white, number one, that's the first sign. And then there is a secondary sign, which could be, just giving one example, that the hairs that are growing out of that area then turn white. That is where, if one were to go to a kohen, and you have to go to a kohen, knowing the rules don't make you a mitzoida or not, it's the declaration of the mitzoida that will render you into a mitzoida. He will declare you are a mitzoida. Just be aware of that. Now, another layer. There are times that the body developed some of the signs, but not all of the signs. And we'll leave it at that. This is a very general statement. A lot of details are missing, but it's not negeya to our sugya. When a person only developed some of the signs of this Torah leprosy, then the kohen will declare them to be a matzoira musgar. Musgar means that they are not yet confirmed, but they are confined. We'll explain on Amud Beis confined to what, but they are on a level of a tzoras. They are confined mitzoiras. What happens now? So the Torah says they wait a week. At the end of the week, from when they were declared to be this confined mitzoira, they go back to the kohen. And if everything stayed the way it was, then they remain confined for another week. If the signs go away, they are going to be declared pure. If things get worse, we'll see, then at a time the kohen will declare them to be confirmed. And a confirmed mitzoida, a mitzoida muchlat, as we will see, has additional laws which make his status and his way out more complicated. When a mitzoida is confirmed, he's not doomed to be confirmed for the rest of his life. Whenever the signs of tzoras begins to go away, again a kohen will come and visit him. And once the kohen determines that the signs are indeed no longer there, the halachic signs, then he'll begin a process of purification. He won't become pure right away, but it's an interesting process. It's a 7-day process, and on the 8th day, after doing something on the first day and on the 7th day and the korbanos of the 8th day, this person becomes tahor. Now, our Mishnah does not clarify which step are we up to when we are questioning whether you can show the signs to a kohen. And there are many stages in the way. There is when the person is like us, we're not mitzoraim, we're not even confined, we were okay, and now maybe these signs are signs of tzoras. That is one place, one moment, the first time you would go to a kohen. Then there is another time, a person who was already confined, but not yet confirmed. And even that, there are two times. There is, at the end of the first week, there is an option of continuing the confined period for a second week. And the Torah writes that if after the second week, even if things stayed the same, even if things did not get better, if it didn't get worse, at the end of the second week, they'll be deemed pure. Then there is the person who was already confirmed, but now the things got better. And there also he would have to be seen by a kohen to determine whether halachically he can begin his purification process or not. So really there are many points where regarding tzoras, one needs to interact with the kohen, and the Mishnah doesn't specify which point. The Mishnah introduces the concept. The concept is like this, that on Yom Tiv it says, V'samachta b'chagecha. When someone is going to be declared a mitzvah on any level, it's going to diminish the joy of Yom Tiv. Based on the premise again, that tzoras is not an illness, that when you're a mitzvah, you have to be quarantined, it's not contagious, it's not dangerous. There's the right of not a kohen not examining it. Now, another detail, as we will see, there are those who hold, let a kohen examine it. If the ruling that the kohen would like to give will downgrade the status, then he'll be quiet if there is such an option. If there is an option. And if the ruling is a good ruling, in other words, if what the signs are not halachically problematic, great. So then there's no downside going to the kohen. Rav Meir holds exactly that. Rav Meir holds that even after a kohen sees the signs of tzoras, the kohen is not obligated to give a ruling. He has the option to be quiet. So there's no downside showing tzoras to a kohen on Chol HaMoed. It will never dampen your simcha. Adarabah, you only have what to gain. Says the Mishnah, show your nega on Chol HaMoed to a kohen. If the ruling will bring about a leniency, then the kohen will indeed render the ruling. But if the kohen determines that what he sees is going to worsen your status of tumah, the kohen simply won't say it. The kohen will tell you, come back after Yom Tiv. And therefore the advantage here is you will never dampen your Yom Tiv by showing your tzoras to a kohen. The Chachamim, and as we will see, the Chachamim is Rebbe Yosi. Loi lahakal v'loi lahachmer. Loi lahakal means that since if a kohen were to see it, he will have to render a ruling. Could be the ruling will be good for you. Could be the ruling will be bad for you. So therefore, the other solution that the Chachamim give, or Rabbi Yossi gives us, who says you go to a kohen, lechatchila, don't go to a kohen. Gevaldik. The concepts are amazing, and now we're going to break down into greater detail. It's going to be very beautiful, because like I mentioned, there is someone who's completely tar the first time they're going to a kohen. Then there is a person who was only confined, not yet confirmed. Then there is another time where you're going to go from confined to confirmed, or from confined to pure. Then you have the kohen that's already confirmed, the person who's confirmed, and now they're going to have to get out of that. So there's going to a kohen, hopefully to get the ruling that the signs went away and you can begin your purification process. So Tanya, we learn.
Do we do this with any other way of rendering halacha, delaying it because the results are not good results?
If there is no danger involved, it's Kevin is asking a good question. Is there any other place in halacha where you have a shaila and you go to the Rav and the Rav has an option not to give a ruling? Absolutely. I'll give you just one example. I shouldn't laugh. I'm saying that if, God forbid, let's say there's a couple and there is some issue whether halachically they are, infidelity, God forbid. A Rav can say he needs to think about it more. I mean, I don't think that's a good example. I think over there, if a Rav knows that they can't be together, he has to render that ruling. Let me think about another case. It's very interesting. And another thing, Kevin, let me tell you what's very unique. That normally halachic rulings have to be rendered by the halachic experts. And by tzoras, it has nothing to do with the expert. It's not about the expert. Now, if a kohen is not an expert, he has to bring with him an expert. And the expert will tell the kohen what to say, which is amazing. That's for sure unique. The Rebbe says that since at times the mitzvah has to be quarantined, has to be pushed aside, to push another Jewish side, is the end of the world. And therefore only a Kohen, who by nature is a kind person, a Kohen is an Isha Chesed, Aran HaKohen, only an Isha Chesed has the right to be the one to determine, God forbid, if and when someone has to be pushed aside. If a person is not a kind person, then they're automatically disqualified to give a ruling which might quarantine another Yid. Let's go inside. Tanya, we learned in a Braisa, Rabbi Meir Oimer. Rabbi Meir says, like we learned in the Mishnah, Rabbi Yosi, that's the Chachamim says, why? Because if you will involve yourself, says Rabbi Yosi, even though your intent is to involve yourself, hopefully to find a heter. But he holds that then then you will have to render a decision. In other words, once the kohen sees it, can't say come back later. And could be what he'll see will make the person more tamei, and it's going to take away the Yom Tov. Now, here's the key where we're going to have to unpackage all the details. Comes along Rabbeinu HaKadosh. Right? And he says like this, that need in Divrei Rav Meir, I agree with Rav Meir in the case where the person was a musgar, he was already confined, he's going to the kohen to see whether he's going to become even worse. And we'll see in a moment, I agree with Rav Meir, he is allowed to go to the kohen on Chol HaMoed. However, I, Rebbe, agree with Rabbi Yosi, if he is already a muchlat, he's already confirmed that he may not go to a kohen on Chol HaMoed. Now, why? Why would that be? So let me just say one nekuda. Rebbe agrees with Rabbi Yosi. Rebbe agrees to the concept that if a person shows his signs of leprosy to the kohen does not have an option to tell him, come back later. He has to render a ruling. But the beauty of Rebbe is that he is already breaking down many cases, contrasting one with the other, as we'll do in a moment, and he's going to point out that there are certain phases in this journey in which there isn't a downside. Downside doesn't mean that this person will become tar. Isn't the downside means that if a person who has these signs goes to a kohen, if the worst case scenario is they remain as tamei as they are, as long as the kohen will not make them worse, that's not called a downside. You didn't dampen their chag. You're not ruining their v'samach. It was already ruined. They got used to it. Right? Gavaldik. So whenever it can never get worse, it can only get better. That is where Rabbi Yosi, Rebbe will hold, go to the kohen. When, in other words, like Rav Meir, but whenever if there is an option where in a certain scenario things will get worse, then, like Rabbi Yosi, you don't go to the kohen. So now the Gemara clarifies. So let's go through all the cases. Amar Ravam, bitahar. If a person prior to Yom Tov, Bechlal was not a Mitzayda, and these signs are appearing for the first time, and now we're going to the kohen for the first time, says Rava Gavaldik Yechidish, that even Rav Meir holds, don't go to the kohen. Now, why should you not go to the kohen? Why should you not go to the kohen? Because even though Rav Meir holds that the kohen is not obligated to give you a halachic ruling, but if the only halachic ruling that is possible here will make it worse, why would you go? Makes a lot of sense. A person sees the signs of tzoras. Why go on Chol HaMoed? I mean, the best case scenario is you stay the same. Stay the same. The best case scenario, you prior to the first ruling, you're not a mitzvah. You'll remain not a mitzvah. But maybe these signs are problematic. Maybe they are super problematic. You'll become right away confirmed. Maybe they are partially problematic. You'll become a confined. It's problematic. There is no upside. It's either the same or worse. Why go? Gavaldik. Now, next, Behez Gerishoin, Rashi says, if you were already deemed a partial mitzvah, well, some of the signs appeared, they did not confirm you, we'll see details, it's even worse, but you were confined. You were confined to be a mitzvah, and as we mentioned, a confined mitzvah waits a week, and then they go at the end of the first week to a kohen, and there is the possibility, if things stay the same, if things did not get worse, they will be confined for another week. So if you are at the end of the first week, says Rava beautifully, everyone agrees, the Kulam El Pligi, that you are allowed to go. Wow. Why are you allowed to go? Because there is an upside. If the Kohen will deem that the partial signs went away, then he'll declare that you are pure. You being declared pure on Chol Hamoed is a reason to go. That's good. He's going to add to your joy. If things are the same, then it's not going to make it worse. It's either not going to make it worse or it's going to get better. So then, why not go? Go. Hold on. Problem is, according to Rabbi Yossi, that a kohen must render a ruling, but things can get worse, asks Tosfos on the bottom. Because if, let's say the hairs turned white, if or the other details were added in the signs of tzaras, there is a downside. So Tosfos innovates about on Tosfos in the Amid that even according to Rabbi Yossi, who holds that normally, in almost all cases, once a kohen sees the question, he must render a ruling. That is not the case at the end of the first week. At the end of the first week of being confined, everyone agrees that the kohen has an option to say, come back next week. Gewaldig. So since the worst case scenario is everything stays the same. The best case scenario is it gets better. Everyone will agree you should go to a kohen. Ki pligi. No, before we get to Rebbe.
What's the question? Why should he go to a kohen? A person's not a mumcha in these things, and he's nervous. He doesn't know what the story is. Knowledge is half the refuah. He knows exactly.
No, it's not. So that's the whole point. So here again, Samach. That's the whole point we spoke out in the beginning. If tzaras is to be viewed as an illness, right? Of course, what kind of mindset is it? Don't go to the doctor. Shoita, go find out what it is. Samach, it's not an illness that's contagious. Correct? You're not going to hurt anyone. You're not avoiding it. You're going to deal with it. But why go to the kohen over Chol Hamoed?
Oh.
Because it's V'samachta b'chagecha. So we're breaking Gavaldik. What we're breaking down is that there's really three options. Things will get better, things will stay the same, things will get worse. And as we're working out the details, that as long as there is no option of things getting worse, which is the case of the end of the first week, things will stay the same, which aren't great, but they're going to get better, then everyone will agree that you should go. Ki pligi, where is there an argument before Rebbe? Where do we have the argument of Rav Meir and Rabbi Yossi Daf Zayin Amud Beis? This is Gavaldik Behezger Sheni. At the end of the second week of confinement, now you should know at the end of the second week, you can't stay the way it is. If things did not get halachically worse, you're going to be declared pure. If things got worse, you're going to be declared confirmed, muchlat. So now let's go. Rabbi Meir, top line, Amud Beis, since he holds Bikoyin Talia Milsa, in other words, his status totally depends on the declaration or the psak of the kohen. And again, Rabbi Meir holds that the kohen has the right, even though the kohen knows what the status is, not to share it now. Come back next week. So again, there's only an upside, because if this confined Mitzoira, if his signs did not get worse, he's going to be declared pure. Good. If it got worse, and therefore the kohen will have to declare that you are a confirmed tzaras, but he doesn't have to say it right now. He'll be quiet. So go to the kohen. Mar Sava, that's Rabbi Yossi. Since the Torah says letaroy or letamoi, from where Rabbi Yossi learns that when a kohen sees the mitzias, he has to declare Torah or Tamei. He cannot. There's no option of silence, since there is a possibility that he will be declared muchlat, which is worse. That's why don't go to the kohen. Now that we narrowed the scenario where there was a machlokes Rabbi and Rabbi Yossi, now it's gavaldik. Now we're going to have to clarify what the Rebbe holds, and the way we clarify it is actually pointing out a gavaldik contradiction. That there's opposite versions. Rebbe agrees with Rav Meir in one case and with Rabbi Yossi in another case. But what is the case You have two braises, each one recording the opposite view of Rebbe. So Amar Mar, we learned before in the braises that we quoted on Amad Aleph, Amar Rebbe, Divrei nirei b'muchlat, niramei b'musgar. That's what we learned over there. No, it's Braisa number 1, what we will call on Amad Aleph. Rebbe holds that that a kohen may not examine a confirmed mitzayra. Why may we'll work it out again. We'll speak it out in a moment. But Rebbe holds that a kohen is allowed to examine the musgar, is allowed to examine the confined. But we'll call that Braisa number 2. It says the opposite. That Rebbe allows the confirmed and does not allow the confined. So first of all, it's clear Tanoyi hi aliba de Rebbe. Machlokes, obviously, what Rebbe holds, but what will be the rationale behind it? So let me speak out one more intro, and everything fits. It's a beautiful puzzle. The concept is clear, and it's important to remember that the Rebbe agrees in principle with Rabbi Yossi that once a kohen sees the signs of this type of leprosy on one's body, on one's skin, the kohen does not have an option of being silent. Let's begin with that. So now the question is, okay, the concept. When can a person go to a kohen? Whenever halachically there is no downside, if there's only an upside. The question is now, how do you define the downside and how do you define an upside? So let me just tell you a couple of laws. A person who's declared confined, only confined, he doesn't have all of the signs of leprosy, but he's confined, it's called a musgar. Such a person is banished from living amongst the people. He has to go michutz lamachna. So already a confined person, and that's the case that we are talking about. He's already michutz lamachna. However, there are details. The details is that he doesn't have to rent his garments. He doesn't have to leave his hair uncut. He doesn't have to walk around declaring about himself, I'm tamei. Correct. So it's not as bad yet as the confirmed, but a confined is already banished. Another important detail, even though the only confined mitzvah is already banished, he cannot live amongst people, but he's allowed to have relations with his wife. His wife can move in with him. So the next step will be that if he becomes a muchlat, if he becomes confirmed, so this is what happens. A confirmed cannot be with a confirmed mitzvah may not be in the camp, but even a confirmed mitzvah, we're going to go with the opinion that will hold, can still be with his wife.
Oh, wait, is he allowed?
One second. When the confirmed mitzvah is declared, the signs went away, now you begin a purification process, which takes 7 days. We're not going to call it the 7 clean days. That term is used by a woman going out of the status of a nida. On mitzvah, it's called 7 purification days. During those 7 purification days, listen to this, he's already allowed in the camp, but he's not allowed to be with his wife. Now, when a person is going from a status where, listen to this question, they can either be with their wives, but not be with everyone else. They have to be outside michutz lamachna, or vice versa. They can be with everyone else, but they cannot be with their wives. Which setting is more painful for a person? Now, obviously, the answer we would give is it depends on the marriage. Yes, but no, the concept. So it says, let's read the words and then we'll put this puzzle together, Kevin, and you'll ask you a question in a moment. So Mar Savar, the second Braisa, right, that holds that Rebbe allows for a confirmed mitzvah to go. A confirmed mitzvah, Chavra, listen, a confirmed mitzvah is someone who may not be with the people, but could be with his wife. If the kohen will deem him still problematic, it didn't get worse. no problem. The only option will be that maybe the signs went away. If the signs went away, the Kohen will declare, begin your purification process. What happens when you begin your purification process? You are allowed to go back into the camp, but you're not allowed to be with your wife. So is that something that will dampen the person's joy? So the second Braisa holds, the Ipcha Braisa holds, that since Rebbe holds, Tzafsa da Alma Adif, if you have to pick between, can I be with the Chevra, can I be with my wife? A person will opt in to be with the people, even if the price is not to be with his wife. So therefore, there's no downside. Mimanavshach. If you're going to be deemed still problematic, whatever you were, it continues. The only direction that a confirmed mitzvah can go is to begin the 7-day purification. When you begin the 7-day purification, it's better because now you can already go amongst the people. You're no longer mechutz lamachna. You may no longer be with your wife. It's better for you. Omar Sava, the first Braisa holds the opposite. That if a person has to choose whether to be with his wife, whether to be with the oilam, his option will be to be with his wife. And even if that means he has to pay the price of not being allowed to be with everyone else. That's the mamish, the opposite. Umar Savar, Safsa de Ishtoi Adifole. So let's halt up. So when a person is confirmed, according to this version, Rabbi will not allow the person to go to a kohen. Because if you are confirmed, if you'll remain confirmed, everything stays the way it is. You didn't make it worse. But if the Kohen will declare you're now beginning your 7 days purification, even though he's allowed to enter the camp, during the 7 days he can't be with his wife, that worsened it. So a confirmed mitzvah is not allowed to go to a Kohen. But a person who's only confined, like we mentioned, a confined mitzvah can be with his wife. We hold that the Rebbe holds even a confirmed mitzvah can be with his wife. So there's the person just, can I be with my wife? You can be with your wife like this, you can be with your wife like that. Again, so there's no downside. If there's no downside, that is why the first Braisa holds that a confined person is allowed to go to a kohen. Gewaldig. Now all of this only fits on the premise that even when a person goes from only confined to confirmed, he can still be with his wife, even though he's a confirmed mitzvah. He's on the highest level. He's mechutz lamachne, v'tamei tamei yikra, he has to rent his garment. He can be with his wife. The only time he cannot be with his wife is when he begins the purification process, which is a little bit counterintuitive. Because when a person is beginning their purification process, they're on the way of becoming better. But so holds Rebbe. Based on that, everything fits. Kevin, what's your question?
Oh, if he was confined during Chol HaMoed, that means the Kohen saw him before Chol HaMoed.
That's exactly what we're saying. We're saying that the end of the first week was during Chol HaMoed, or the end of the second week was during Chol HaMoed, or there was a change, right, for the worse or for the better on Chol HaMoed. All of these...
One should not be going to the Kohen before Chol HaMoed because that... ruins their holiday.
No, we don't say that. We don't. Okay, so Kevin is just. It's a good observation. In other words, we don't extend it that far back. We don't say don't even go a week before because if X, Y, and Z, it's going to go in. That we don't do. Very good point, Kevin. But on Chol HaMoed, don't do something that will make your situation worse. Beautiful. So so the Gemara says, Lememra, all of this only fits when we're saying that the Rebbe allows a confirmed. Why does he allow a confirmed? Because it's not going to get worse. A confirmed can be in the second Braisa. The first Braisa that Rebbe does not allow, Rebbe allows a confined. Rebbe allows a confined is based on the premise that even if he gets confirmed, he can still be with his wife. Lememra the Gemara says yes. Vehatanya, as we learned, that's a proof. Benichosa. It says in Parshas Mitzayram that v'yoshav michutz la'ahaloi shivas yomim. That during the 7 days through which he's doing his purification process, he should be outside his tent. And you know what that means? Outside your tent. The word tent is a refined way of saying your wife, right? Isha is beisai, beisai is ishtoi. Same thing with the tent. You know, that means that during the 7 days, you're aser b'tashma shamita. And how do we know, again, we're speaking about being together with one spouse? Because okay, so now, since the Torah only says that you cannot be with your wife during the 7 days, so we are understanding it's only during those 7 days. Now, Rabbi Yehuda Omer, I have another proof. It says in Yecheskel, if this is the version, Shivas Yomim Yisperuloi, this is also speaking about a Mitzayram, that 7 days shall be counted for him, from where he learns that only Yemei Sefiroi, that only during those 7 purification days, is where this Mitzayra, who's on the way of becoming pure, may not be with his wife, but V'lo Yemei Chalutai, if the person is in the highest stage of Tumas Tzoras, he was confirmed, still he's allowed to be with his wife. Rabbi Yossi ben Rabbi Yehuda argues with that. Obviously, our answer does not follow this Rabbi Yossi ben Rabbi Yehuda, because he says something very logical. That you're right, I know that where did the Torah teach us that a Mitzayra cannot be with his wife, that when he's counting his 7 clean days, he can't be with his wife. But from there I have a Kal V'chomer, that if he cannot be with his wife even when he's already on the way of becoming pure, then for sure, when he's muchlat, for sure he cannot be with his wife. That Zayin Yemei Sefiroi is Kal V'chomer L'meichelutai. So first of all, we see it's a Machlokes Tanoim. And what does Rebbe hold? I want you to know that Danti Lifnei Rebbe, that I was learning this in front of Rebbe, and I told my teacher that Limadetonu Rabbeinu, did the master teach us, or teach us master, and this is going to be a proof like the Tanakama, this is going to proof like Rabbi Yehuda, this is going to be a proof that even when a Mitzayra is muchlat, he can be with his wife. And the proof is a historical fact, that we had a king called Uziyahu, who became a leper, and he continued his reign as he was a leper. After he passed away, his son Yosam took over. So says Rab Chia, master, right, is it correct that the Yosam, the name of the son, if you'll follow properly the chronological years of the kings, when they reigned, when they passed away, when the child took over, you will see that Yosam must have been born through a conception that was done by his father while he was already a leper. That is just a proof that even when you're muchlat, you can still be with your wife. And when Rebbe heard that, he concurred, which is great. So now we resolved the contradiction in Brises, and all of that is based on the premise that Meir holds ultimately a kohen has the option of not rendering a ruling, and Rabbi Yossi and Rebbe hold he has to paskin. But again, if there is no downside, you're allowed to go. But my komifligi, this question of whether the isur of tashmish hamita goes back to Yemei Chalutai. Rabbi Yossi ben Rabbi Yehuda Savar Gali Rachmana b'Mei Sefiroi. I know that God only told us the law that a Mitzayra cannot be with his wife during the 7 purification count. But for Kol Shchein, logically, he's already getting better. He already has that restriction during the Yemei Chilutai. For sure, he may not be with his wife. Umar Savar, the other Tanoim hold, Ma de Gali Gali, wherever God revealed this halacha taka da azoyidas, Umay de loy Gali, loy Gali, Umay de loy Gali, loy Gali. Like Tosfos says, what it's an obvious Kal V'chomer. So Tosfos already introduces something that we'll have in the Gemara soon. Right? Not mamash for this, the concept that whenever you are learning a halacha that's deemed a chiddush halacha, a novelty halacha, and a novelty halacha means that halacha functions based on certain rules. And there are certain halachas that don't follow those rules. And maybe Kavan, I think you're right, this might be the only place, if it's the only case, where the kohen has an option not to render a ruling. I don't think there's such. There are many unique halachas of a Mitzayra that we don't find elsewhere. So once we're speaking about a chiddush law, you can't learn anything from it. Wherever God said, that's where you do it. If God didn't say it, you can't learn. You can't apply it there. Says the Gemara. Now, all of this, everyone's shita is concurring that you only become a Mitzayra if the kohen declares you're a Mitzayra. Right? Unlike an illness, again, if a person is ill, just because they didn't go to the doctor doesn't mean they're well. So lememra de bekoyin talia milsa, whether they're a mitzayra or not, or from mitzayra to muskar to muchla to 7 days to whatever, it's all about the koyin. Yes, in. And amazingly, we're going to have 2 different sources from where we will see that one's becoming a Metzoida, or any change of status in a Metzoida, is only and fully dependent on the declaration of the Kohen. Source number one, it says in Parshas Tazria, Ubiyoim heira azboy, just to know the context. One of the many cases the Torah gives is if a person has these signs of leprosy all over their body, from their head until their toe. It's all white. Amazingly, that person is tahor. If any part of the body later develops a little bit of healthy skin, that's this verse. So on the day that you will show the healthy skin to the Kohen, now the Kohen will declare it to be tamei. Because this heter is only if you're fully white. So on the day that you will show, as we'll see more details in the next daf, on daf ches, either from the extra letter vav, or from the entire word ubiyayim, we'll see details how to learn it out. From there we learn, yesh yayim she'ataroyaboy, v'yesh yayim she'ataroyaboy. All right. No, there's an option of not looking. What's the option of not looking? We learned it in our Mishnah. If it's chalamoyet, if looking at this person only has a downside to it, then the Kohen has the option not to look. The Metzias is the same, I don't care. Until the Kohen declares the person tamei, that person is not tamei. Mekan Amru, another case where the Kohen won't look. Chasan means halachically the day that you are getting married, the day not when you get engaged. And going into, if you married someone for the first time, when you have what we call the 7 days of celebration for the next 7 days. So a chasen shenoi lo beinega, noisten lo zayin yemei hamishta. Give the entire 7 days to him, and to whether the leprosy appeared on his body, or whether it's a leprosy that's appearing on his home, or whether it's a leprosy that's appearing on his garments. These are the 3 areas where these signs of leprosy might appear. And v'chein, connected to our topic, benegel, during Yantav. Yantav means chalamoyed. Noistem lo shivas yemei haregel. Divrei Rabbi Yehuda, because and I'll tell you more, like we learned on Amud Aleph, that the initial going to the Kohen has no upside. Like Rava was machadesh, everyone agrees, don't go. You're tar. The only thing that can happen is something worse. Why would you go? And and only if the Kohen declares you tamei, you become tamei. Wait until later. Rabbi says, I don't need your ubiyoim heira azboy to be the source, because I have a better source. What's his better source? Even though it's later, it's in the next portion. It says in Parshas Metzoida, now this verse is only written regarding tzoras habayis, that if the signs of leprosy appear on one's home, and if the Kohen would declare this home as a home that is a leprosy home, everything in the home becomes tamei. So it says explicitly in the Chumash, prior to that declaration, remove all of the articles of the home. Like this, you are preventing it from becoming tamei. Again, I just want to point out that if this leprosy is some sort of illness, can you imagine? How does removing it from the home before the declaration help? But it's not. If it's not in the home when the Kohen made the declaration, you save those articles from becoming tamei. And that's explicit. It says, V'tziva ha-kohen ufinos habayis, that the Kohen should tell the person, guys, first remove everything. That means you know it's bad news. And at least you saved those articles from becoming impure. So says Rebbe, Im mamtinun lo l'dvar harashus, why is the Kohen delaying judgment? He's only delaying judgment to save your kalim from tumah. There's no mitzvah involved, yet you are allowed to do it. So kol shchein, if there is a dvar mitzvah, you're a chasen, you're celebrating, v'samachta b'chagecha Yom Tiv, if you will be declared tamei, then the person will have a lesser amount of simcha. He's going to lose the mitzvah. Then for sure, the Kohen, doesn't have to make that declaration. Point B, it's determined solely on the declaration of the Kohen. We're going to stop over here, and we're going to continue learning certain nuanced differences between these two sources and much more with the help of God.